Hey, I'm Jeff and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about some of the cool things that I've learned about growing plants on planks for almost a year now. Some things that worked out, some that didn't, and the reason why I'm moving some of them from the wood planks to a moss pole. So let's get into it. I think the biggest learning curve for me so far when training a plant to grow up a plank or whatever support system it is that you use to get those larger leaves is that it takes a lot of time. I've seen many videos and people's posts about, large, massive, mature leaves. One thing that no one really tells you is that it takes a lot of time. So from a cutting to this size of a plant, it's almost taken an entire year. It's about 10 months. I think I potted it up in January of this year, so 2022. So almost an entire year to get to this size. And honestly, I thought because it is a pothos and it's really fast growing that it would have completely outgrown the plank so far. I am absolutely blown away by the sizing of the leaves. So here's the original leaves, which are only, like a couple inches here. And this newest leaf is almost the size of my hand. And here comes another one as well. So I'm really happy with how pothos perform on the plank itself. Just enjoy watching them grow and learn from how they grow as well. That way you can be successful with other projects down the road. I just wanted to bring in my golden pothos. These were potted up at roughly the same time. And you can see the golden pothos has climbed up the plank quite a bit more than the marble queen, but the marble queen leaves are much larger than the golden pothos leaves, which is pretty surprising. So I'm okay with the slower growth, but the larger leaves. Don't worry about the little bit of damage on this one. At first I thought it was a pest issue. You see there's a little bit of like browning, but what I think happened is I like to spray these off quite often. And when I sprayed them off, I would put them back underneath the grow light. So I think this is just little burn marks because I have not seen any pest damage on any other leaves, but I think it's because when I spray them off, those little water droplets basically act like magnifying glasses and they burn the leaves. So I've kind of cut that out and I haven't seen any more of that damage. This one's getting a few yellow leaves. I know this is completely root bound, so I'm gonna have to upsize this into something a little bit larger today as well. It'll be the first time that I've repotted a plant on a plank, so I'm gonna be doing that here right away. But I just wanted to show these two that are doing really well for me on a plank. Now, am I saying planks are the end-all be-all? Absolutely not. There's definitely some plants that have not done well on the plank. I'm gonna explain some of the reasons why that might be and some things that you can do to maybe help your plant root a little bit better onto the plank. So if you've never used a moss pole or a wood plank, the concept is pretty simple. You just train them to grow up like they would in their natural habitat to get these larger leaves. And the thing that I like about the plank itself is that it's very easy setup. There's really no maintenance to it. It's not a messy procedure. And the aerial roots, they are super cool. They're like little feet that just attach onto the board. And as they grow up, they just latch on, they grip on, secure themselves to the plank. There is some larger roots and then there's some smaller, they look like little caterpillar legs, and they attach themselves onto the plank. I think it is super cool. This one has some pretty dramatic roots here as well, some very large ones, but then it has those smaller little caterpillar type feet, and I think it's absolutely awesome how they grow up these plants. Here is my golden Hawaiian pothos, which I put on a plank a little while ago, and it's doing okay, but there is one kind of cool thing that I noticed. So when any type of climbing aroid, whether it's a philodendron or like a pothos plant, they will have alternating leaves. So here's the node, so this one pushed out a leaf, here's one, so it goes from side to side all the way up the plank. Now with this one, it kind of looks a little more chaotic, a little bit more unorganized. And the reason why it looks like this and it doesn't look like this one is I actually placed the cutting backwards. So that's why the leaves are a little bit crooked on this side. But this one, you can see it has now corrected itself. The rounded, kind of shielded outside portion is now in the right direction. So it's taken a number of months to get it to correct itself, but that is in fact my fault. I definitely placed the cutting backwards. Okay, well this one just kind of popped off, but I shouldn't have done that. But I've been using these little Velcro plant ties. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to get Oh, I'm just gonna let that drape down. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to get that aerial root in complete contact with the back of the board. And there's a simple solution for that. It's just using like clear packing tape. I'm gonna take this off, the rest of the plant ties. I'm gonna see if I can correct or kind of twist the cutting along a little bit more just to kind of help out. And then you just place the tape, if I can get it in there. Just over top of the node. So I'm just going to add a piece on the top one here. So I'm just going to put the tape roughly where I want it. I'm going to firmly push the aerial root onto the board, and then I'm going to cinch up the tape so that it stays nice and firm there. You can see the stem itself is in contact with the wood. And now I'm going to move down to this portion of the stem here. You can see I've kind of twisted it around to correct it so that the rounded portion of the leaf is now facing outward. Now place a piece of tape just on this node. So I'm just going to put that down there. Again, just twisting it just so those aerial roots can be in contact with the board. Oh, it's on the leaf, don't rip. Just gonna place it like that and like that, so it's nice and secure. Now that it's all taped up and I've kind of twisted the stem a little bit, you can see the leaf orientation is how it should be. So there's one leaf on the right, one on the right, one on the right, one on the left, and then it continues that almost shingling type pattern as it grows upright. And I'm just going to spray the plank down a little bit. Version 2 of the plant shower is coming soon because this one is looking a little bit stained. It's got some water stains on the edges, and this was just kind of a mock-up thing anyways. So I just take my little spray bottle, spray wand, and I'm just going to spray the back of the board. That way it can just kind of coax those roots to latch onto the board. When I talked to a few other people that also have some plants on planks, they agree with me, or I agree with them, that you really don't have to keep the plank wet. Like, you don't have to keep it moist at all times. I let mine dry out completely. So whenever I water the plant or whenever I determine that the plant needs water, I'll just water the back of the plank and then I'll let it kind of drip down into the soil. I'll also water the soil like this, but you don't have to keep the plank wet at all times in order for the plant to learn how to grow on the plank. I did have my philodendron Brazil, which is on my plant shelf, right over here. It did latch onto my drywall all by itself. You can see there's the aerial roots, the markings on the wall. I did not spray my wall down or anything like that, but it trained itself to grow up the wall. And yeah, eventually I took it down. But the same thing with this, you don't have to keep the plank wet at all times. It'll train itself, it latches onto walls, onto rocks, onto trees, and it grows upright. So I will spray the plank down whenever the plant needs water, but otherwise that's pretty much all I do for it. Now I have a couple projects that I want to do. I prefabricated these moss poles, which I'm going to put a couple of my philodendrons on. I'm going to take them off the plank and I'm going to put them on the moss pole, simply for the reason that I find plants with smaller aerial roots, like some of my philodendrons, like my varicosum, the splendid, they're a little bit more difficult to train to grow onto wood. So I'm going to try them with moss. Plants that have big, thick, chunky aerial roots like the pothos and even syngoniums, they do really well on the planks. So I'm going to keep the pothos on my planks. I'm going to try some of these philodendrons on the moss pole. This is chicken wire. Which I picked up from Canadian Tire, and then I bought a bunch of packs of moss. I pre-moistened it, and I have this larger moss pole. I use the chicken wire just because it's fairly stable. I know a lot of people use that plastic mesh as well. Right now, that plastic mesh for the stuff in my local garden centers, it's all outside or they're closed. So this is really the only thing I could find, and I'm actually really happy with the chicken wire itself. It's very, like I said, very stable. It's not going to flop over or anything like that. So I have a couple that I have pre-made. There's many moss pole or how to make moss pole videos out there, so I'm not going to bore you with that. I know I probably should have done this at least a month ago. I'm a little upset that these lower leaves are falling off. I don't want the bottom portion to be bare. But yeah, let's do it right now. So I found a little bit of a larger pot. This is a clear orchid pot. It's a little bit deeper and it's a little bit wider than what it's currently in. So I'm just using my knife and I'm just going to try, like I said, to pry the entire soil, root ball and plank all out at once here. And I can just plop it in the pot. Just going around and just going to loosen it up here a little bit. I don't want everything to separate. Okay, so now it looks like it's loosened up a little bit. Now I can just pull it right out. And I got the plank, the soil, and look at these roots. That is root bound for sure. I'm going to just lightly untangle. Ooh, that's solid. You can hear a little bit of cracking, but okay. Look at this root. This thing is thick. That is chunky. Okay, so that was actually easier than I thought it was going to be. This is solid root. There's like no soil left, so I was having to water this one quite frequently. This pot might actually be too small. Okay, I'm gonna have to maybe find something a little bit larger than this. Oops, just hit the light. Okay, I'm ditching this one because it's really not much different in size compared to this one. So the nice thing about hoarding pots in your home is I typically have a pot size that I need if I need it. And without hitting the ceiling, I'm gonna place it in this one. You can see just around the edges, it's got some space and it's got a little bit depth in the pot as well. So I'm just gonna add some soil in the bottom. And because it has a large drain hole, I'm just putting a little wood chip right over the drain hole just so all the soil doesn't run out all the time. Let's see if there's a larger one. Just gonna put that there, put a little bit of soil in the bottom, and then I'll place the cutting right on top of that. Added too much soil. Hopefully this plant appreciates the new pot and the new soil and explodes with new growth. And now I'm just going to backfill in all the soil just around the sides. It's a little wobbly, but I'm definitely going to be giving it some water right now just to help settle the soil. And this one needed a good soaking because it was absolutely bone dry. Okay, this next one might be a little bit messy because I've never done the conversion, or I've never placed a large moss pole like this. I've only ever used the plastic. These ones are super easy to use. So yeah, I needed something a little bit larger for this one. So I'm just trialing this large one and we'll see how it goes. But be prepared for a messy job. So as you can see, when I take the Velcro off, this one has not latched on to the plank at all. I'm just going to take this one out. I will be using this for another plant, but for right now, I'm just going to set it aside. So I'm going to take this out of the pot. I'm not going to disturb it too much. Just want to make sure that there's no root rot, and everything looks really good so far. So no rotting roots. I'm going to leave it like this, and then I'm going to first see if I can fit this big moss pole in here. So I left a little bit of room like on the bottom portion, so when I flip it up in the cup, it'll have an aeroid mixture in the bottom. I'm just going to stuff all this in, and then I'm going to flatten this out just a little bit so that it can sit in the container like so. Just so you can see at the bottom, there's all my aeroid mix. Just gonna again flatten it so I have a little bit more room. And then I'm gonna place a little bit of the soil at the back just so it remains upright. And I'll add the cutting in the bottom. And again, I'm trying to find the largest amount of aerial roots that are poking out so I can make sure it comes in contact with the moss. And now I'm just going to re-add all the soil. And hopefully this little moss project works. Now I'm going to, I'm just going to temporarily use this fabric for a second here, just so I can get one of those plant ties and secure it properly. Okay, not bad for my first moss pole attempt. This thing's huge, so I'm looking forward to this verrucosum growing up and getting those larger leaves. So I'm going to put it back in its location just down there, and I might do my splendid next. You can see it's not latched onto the plank at all, just because these guys have very small little aerial roots, and I'll show you here without destroying the plant. You can see very fine, tiny little aerial roots, and I want them to grow into the moss so that I can prop and chop at some point. Just gonna lay this down. This one, just because it's so tall already, I might actually just secure it to the moss pole before I put it in the pot. Okay, this has way better roots, or bigger roots, than the verrucosum did. So I'm gonna break this up a little bit, not to damage the roots. And then I'm going to lay this on top of the moss pole and secure it that way. I'm just going to tie it up here first. I can adjust it afterwards if needed. Okay, so that leaf is on this side. I'm going to take this. And like I said, I can adjust it afterwards. This is just a rough mock-up so the cutting doesn't flop over. Now I can take this, dirt falling everywhere. I can take this large cutting, and I'm going to squeeze the pole here as well, just make it a little bit more flat. Put some soil in the bottom, and then I'm just going to dump it in. Okay, so that is straight in the back. I'm just going to push all these roots back down into the soil. Like I said, I can adjust this as needed. I'm just going to make a spot so I don't make a complete mess of everything here. These roots are in. Now I'm just going to re-add the soil and push it down. I got everything somewhat tidied up, and I did add those support ties so that all of the aerial root or the nodes come in contact with the moss. So this is a little bit of a trial for me. I've never done this type of moss pole. Like I said, I've only ever used the, like my Monstera one back here, those plastic cased ones. Those are super easy, super simple. So I wanted to try these cylinder or the chicken wire type ones, see if there's any difference or which one is better. I also plan on doing an aeroid mix pole as well. So something very similar with the chicken wire, but just mixed up with an aeroid mix instead of the moss. That's something that I will try down the road. Otherwise, overall, I'm pretty happy with how everything looks. The process itself was, as expected, it was pretty messy, but I'm looking forward to seeing how this verrucosum, or sorry, this splendid responds, and hopefully I can see some nice chunky aerial roots growing into the moss. And when it comes time to propagate this plant, I can cut the moss pole or whatever it is, and then I'll just reroot that top cutting into a new pot and just continue the process of getting those larger leaves. So I think that's gonna be pretty much it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my plank and moss pole content. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. If you wanna watch another houseplant video, click this one right here. Otherwise, thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye.